Good evening. It feels great to be finally here. My name is Alejandro. I'm an engineer. I became an engineer because I wanted to create things that made the lives of people a bit better, a bit more livable. And because I didn't want to disappoint my parents. But that's another story. And after getting my engineering degree, I ventured off into my professional life, full of hopes and dreams. I had a great future ahead of myself, I was told. Engineering's where it's at. And over the years, I actually had the chance to work in very interesting products across very different industries, from electric cars all the way to groundbreaking medical devices. I was always lucky of being in great teams and working with really smart people. It was an environment of incredible technologies, that were supposed to be revolutionizing the world. It wasn't long after having embarked on this journey that I noticed the toll that the constant pressure, the stress, the complexity, the fear, and the never-ending quest for efficiency and productivity took on the people around me. I saw competent people just fade out. Extraordinary leaders just give in to the environment. An environment that burned through people the same way a steam engine burned through coal. And whenever we ran out of coal, we just took in someone new to keep the engine going. And of course, I started to feel it myself too, right? I started to feel this deep sense of disconnection. I felt as if I was just another lump of coal, fueling this meaningless engine. We were doing these incredible products that were supposed to make people's lives better. But we were making the lives of the people working on them miserable. After a couple of years, I remember thinking to myself, is this it? Is this how I'm supposed to feel for the rest of my working life? And so I started to read about it, and I started to research. Turns out, even if we have come to accept this constant state of stress and disengagement as normal, it's not. It's burnout. On the one hand, up to 65% of full-time engineers have had a burnout in the last year. 65%. That's 2 out of 3 in the last year alone. On the other hand, there's surveys that say that up to 84% of executives are convinced that their companies put employee well-being over productivity. So we're clearly perceiving a reality and living another. That's the thing with humans. We're flawed. There's surveys that say that 70% of company leaders would rate themselves as inspiring and motivating, while almost 65% of their employees would rather see their boss get fired than getting a pay raise. And even if I didn't care for people, wouldn't I, as a leader, have the biggest interest on getting the maximum results out of my investment? Wouldn't I be interested in getting the maximum potential out of the people working with me? Wouldn't I want at least that one blind spot uncovered? Companies that have healthy cultures deliver up to 200% higher returns to shareholders than companies in which this coal-burning cultures are the norm. Having a healthy culture not only increases productivity and returns, it also fosters innovation, creativity, resilience, and even sustainability, all crucial characteristics in today's world. So, if having these authoritarian, mechanistic cultures burns through our people and doesn't even make sense financially, what are we doing? The problem is, the principles that we use to organize work today come from the late 19th and early 20th century, when mass production started to dominate the economy. Managers came up with the idea of breaking production down into very specific, very repetitive tasks to enhance productivity. Today, we have machines that do most of this repetitive, meaningless work for us. But we haven't freed ourselves from this thinking. The good news is, the vast majority of professionals today are aware of the importance of a healthy culture for business. The only thing is, we often don't know how to actually achieve it. I for sure didn't. And even if I did, even if we did know, change is hard for humans. Destroying our old ways of thinking and coming up with new ones, that's intimidating. It's what Joseph Schumpeter called the process of creative destruction. The new has to inevitably destroy the old. And so, what's this new thing that I'm talking about? What's a culture in which humans actually thrive? Well, there's a lot of research of this topic. It's a very broad topic. But in essence, cultures in which humans thrive have three main characteristics. They give people a sense of psychological safety, to make mistakes, to try new things, and to learn. They create a sense of shared purpose, to align the effort, and to give a sense of belonging. And they allow people to develop an awareness about themselves and to grow. I decided to do my own research. I looked for bold leaders across business, tech, and organizational development who were already trying out new approaches to creating thriving cultures. I sat down with them and I asked them, what are you doing? What's working for you and what's not working? I really wanted to be a better leader. And as I listened to their stories, I started to notice a couple of patterns. Even though these leaders came from very different backgrounds and were working in highly different environments, their decisions and their behaviors had a lot of things in common. All of these leaders consciously make room for our humanness. They recognize that the people working with them are fellow humans, and they meet them at eye level. They dedicate resources, time, budget, energy, to create and maintain structures and processes that make room for people to explore, to play, to express themselves. And they are aware that sustainable transformation can't be rushed. One of the experts I talked to told me a great story. She said, I was working once with this leader, right? And she had just had her first meeting with her team in which they set up a structure in that every team member got 1 minute to talk, uninterrupted. The team members saw this as a very positive change, because for the first time they felt that they were being able to speak and be heard. When asked about her experience, the leader said, "It's the worst thing I've ever done." I couldn't say anything because I had to listen to everybody. That's the power of structures. And when leaders make room for humanness, they create psychological safety. Second, they all actively embody the culture that they want to achieve. They lead by example, and they show vulnerability. They admit their own mistakes and hold themselves accountable. They communicate openly. They listen before they talk. They never express their opinion first. They make meaningful questions, and they take a stance. They create a shared understanding of who we are and what we stand for as a team. And they actively work to protect it by addressing behavior that doesn't align with the values and the culture, even if it means having to part ways with people. The vice president of a global tech company told me, if you ever have a leader in your organization that doesn't align with the values of the team, take them out. Obviously not overnight, but after you've observed them long enough, and after you've invited them to have open conversations, maybe after you've gathered a couple of outside perspectives, if after all this, it still doesn't feel right, the talk needs to be had. He said every time he did it, the team appreciated it and thanked him for it. It actually came across as a positive sign of his leadership. By embodying the culture, leaders create a shared purpose. And third, they all nurture the individuals. They reduce complexity by translating these abstract organizational goals into relatable, very concrete tasks that resonate with employees. They accommodate very different styles and strengths so that everyone can feel more capable and more focused. They all absorb the shock of the demanding, fast-paced business world out there so that it doesn't fall directly on the people. But they don't treat them like babies. They rather challenge them constructively to bring the best out of them. And they empower the people to take ownership, to find their own ways of contributing. They give advice and they encourage people to gradually take on more responsibility and to shape their own growth. The CEO of one of the most inspiring tech companies that I've ever known told me, for me, it's about making quality of life, also at work. That doesn't mean working less or having a table tennis at the office or even giving people everything they might need. It means empowering them so that they can take their own decisions and they can be independent. She said, we don't have a company kindergarten, but we don't need one if we empower and trust our employees to organize themselves and to plan their own schedules to care for their children. By attending the needs of the individuals, leaders enable self-growth. So, all these things that I've talked about are actually the opposite of what we have learned to be good for business and for profit. But if by not doing them, we're actually preventing the perfect conditions for us humans to appear. We are not machines. We are living beings. And so the job of the leader is to create a perfect environment for living beings to thrive. A little bit like gardeners. You see, the seeds need the perfect environment. The job of the gardener is to prepare the soil and to give the seeds enough space and to acknowledge that it will take some time before the seeds sprout. When the first shoots have come out, the job of the gardener is to protect the small plant from the harsh weather and from the plagues and from other dangers. Maybe give them some support and direct their growth. And when the plant has grown, the job of the gardener is just to provide the enough amount of nutrients, sun, water, for every plant, considering their own individual needs. If you ever have tried to grow plants, you know that the very best thing you can do is to recreate the environment in which they thrive and expect them to actually like it. Burning coal is keeps the engine. Burning coal keeps the engine moving, as long as we have coal. It's not the best way to do it, and it's certainly not the cleanest one. It's okay. We didn't know better, but we do now. And if we want to solve the problems of tomorrow, we need to transition today. We have to learn to create thriving culture where we can bring ourselves in. I'm an engineer. And with that information, you might have already guessed one or two things about me. But I'm also a human. And to think that the best work I can do can only be achieved by ignoring all of the qualities that make me a human is naive. We need to learn how to cultivate cultures in which we can bring our whole selves into. Imagine what could happen if we redesigned work to prioritize making room for our humanness, creating shared purpose, and enabling our self-growth. Imagine we didn't have to leave our humanness at home every day when we go to work. What could we create then?